Can we find humor in human rights? Every time I mention humor and human rights together, I get big smiles and very confused looks. And I can assure you, this is not the kind of smiles I get when I mention human rights alone. So there's something that humor does. It does work its magic, and it opens doors for deeper conversation, more open conversation. I want to make a disclaimer at the beginning of this talk and say this is not going to be a stand-up comedy performance about human rights. I'm a human rights practitioner, not a humor practitioner. But I have a big interest in humor and the way it can help us. For a long time, I didn't use humor in my work. I didn't use humor in my work because I was afraid. I was afraid I was not going to be taken seriously. You see, I work in human rights, and we're often seen as tree huggers, idealists. Nothing wrong with being idealists, but we're seen as less professional. So we always aim at being seen professional, so that was one of my fears. Another fear was that the issues I cared about were not going to be taken seriously. Finally, I also was concerned that the humor would shift the focus away from the issues I was working on, and that people wouldn't pay attention to the issue and more to the humor. And also probably that the humor would be really bad and I would make a bad joke, or that the whole campaign would fall apart. So because of all those reasons, I didn't use humor in my work. But I'm not the only one. People working in human rights do not use a lot humor in their work. And instead, we shield ourselves behind a language that is professional, very respectable, but that is not conveying the message that we want. Or let's say, we organize, we mobilize, we quote treaties, we draft policy papers, we do all of this. And all those campaigning tools are tools we're going to use in the future. We're going to continue using them. There's no question about that. But we were avoiding one of the most efficient tools we have, which is humor. So how did I get interested in humor? And how did I start taking it more seriously, if you want? First of all, I noticed that I actually never stopped using humor for myself. It is a great self-care tool that we have. It was my mental hygiene measure. We live in dark times, I'm sure we all know. It's not easy, and when you work on human rights, you do need this self-care tool, this coping mechanism, to take care of yourself. So it was a mental hygiene measure. Also, it's good for your well-being, for your physical well-being. We know that humor releases a cocktail of happy hormones, so why would you not make sure that you laugh every day to have those happy hormones helping you through the day? But then, at the organizational level, I noticed something else. I noticed that the best teams I've worked with, the most effective, where trust was there was solidarity, were the teams where we laughed together. And I thought, if when we laugh together, we are better colleagues, there's a chance that we can be better advocates. And this is when the invitation from the University of Padua in English, but I prefer to say Padua, in Italy came. And what they wanted to know is what did human rights graduate do after they graduated? But what did they do that is less conventional? Not that they went to work for the UN or for the EU, but what else did they do? So we did a series of podcasts and webinars. We interviewed a prison director, a choreographer, a musician, a comedian as well, or somebody who was working for an NGO and starting to work as a comedian on the side. And we realized, humor is really the less explored way to do human rights. So maybe let's do something else. So what can we do? So we decided to do a laboratory and invite people to think with us about how we could use better humor to advocate, educate, communicate about human rights. We got 15 people, and look at those happy faces. We got 15 people coming to the laboratory. We had clowns, and I'm forever reconciled with clowns. They were absolutely amazing, and I think we have to talk in another TED Talk about the philosophy of clowning. But we had clowns, we had a humor researcher, we had a psychology student, we had human rights activists. So based on on this discussion with those people, I would like to tell you about 3 reasons why we should use humor in human rights. First of all, humor helps us cope with complexity. It makes things more relatable. It persuades us not only cognitively, but also emotionally. Our brains process information through logic and through emotion. So humor works both ways. So it's a winner. It's a superpower. So when humor does not just make us think differently, it makes us feel differently. So that's why it is so powerful. One point that I really find very interesting is that humor keeps movement mobilized and builds community based on joy. So humor is a tactic. There is an organizer in the US called Saul Alinsky. He wrote Rules for Radicals. And he was a mobilizer, an activist, a writer. And he was saying a good tactic is a tactic your people enjoy. And if you're involved in any organization that is fighting for an issue, you know that at one point we get tired, our energy is drained, and we don't. It takes sometimes decades for an issue to move on, for progress to be seen. So it's difficult to keep people entertained and keep them motivated. So I believe that movements that laugh together stay together. And the third point, the third reason why I think that we should use humor for human rights is the fact that humor makes a message memorable. So we have research showing the way when, for instance, when you watch a funny video, there's a part of your brain that is connected to empathy and understanding light up. And the longer you watch, the longer you're active watching these videos, the better chance we have for you to share the information that you're seeing. So think about it. Late night comedy shows, memes, these are tools that are actually reaching people that our human rights report never will. So I just want to show you 2 examples of the way humor can be used for human rights. So this example is from the UK, and it's a satirical video that was done in 2016 by The Guardian with the great actor Patrick Stewart. And it's actually at a point, to give you a bit of context, it's a point when the UK was considering withdrawing from the European Convention on Human Rights. And this video is copying a Monty Python show that I don't know if you know it. It was called What the Romans Ever Did for Us. And in 4 minutes, this video is more efficient than any policy brief to explain to people why it is important to keep the protection of the European Convention on Human Rights. And it was used by different it was used also by different serious people in articles to make sure and to stress that point. And the video was seen like 1 million times on YouTube. The second example is from the US. It's called Roe versus Bros. It was done in 2022. So it's a play of word with Roe versus Wade, which is a constitutional court decision in the states that legalized abortion. And in 2022, it was overturned. And that gave the right to every state in the US to ban abortion, making the life of women at risk. So what they did is they went in the street and asked men a random question, like, can a pregnant woman swim? Can a woman with a tampon pee? Can you draw an uterus? So, I mean, there are a lot of great questions, and maybe you should have a look later and see if you can answer those questions. But basically, what they did with this is they managed to show that they showed the ridicule of the situation, that actually men didn't know much about the bodies of women and reproductive rights and reproductive health, but they were the one making the decisions. So it is, for that reason, I think it is a very effective tool. The timing was perfect. It was before the midterm elections. And again, it got the first video they ever did was 50 million views. So a great success, very useful in terms of making an issue that is not easy, relatable, accessible, and supporting like maybe more serious campaigning. So I would like to leave you with two lessons for me. I mean, my personal lessons from this work, from this little work on humor and human rights. So I think if we want to if we want to use humor for human rights, we need to keep two things in mind. First, humor is a serious matter in the sense that it is a skill that we need to practice. And for instance, if an organization wants to integrate humor in their work, they need to make sure that they make alliances with comedians, with cartoonists, with what we call the humor practitioners, if you want. So, for instance, Katie Borum in the States, she's a professor who's made a lot of projects where she brings together comedian and activists for social justice, and together what they do is comedy for social justice. So that's a great example. The second lesson for me is if we want to do another type of humor, a humor that is impactful, respectful, and is working for human rights, we need to find the balance between humor and sensitivity. We want to be funny, we want to make the point, but we also want to be respectful. So it is a more difficult position to be in, but I think it's important to take that into consideration. And the rule there is what we call punching up and punching down. And punching up means what our humor needs to target the people in power, the people with privilege, and not punching down, which would be targeting the people, the more marginalized people and the more vulnerable people. So clearly, humor will not fix everything. This is not what I'm trying to say, but it is an effective tool that is working for advocacy, and one tool that we've neglected, and I think we need to start using it more. I believe that humor helps us, and it helps us put the humanity into human rights, because humor works because it speaks both to the head and the heart, opening the door to complex ideas.